Hello and welcome to Optimal Game State. Today we are going to be looking at the January monthly figure from Games Workshop. If you're not familiar, they do a few in-store models. There's like normally one a month. They tend to disappear quite fast. The idea is you go in, you're able to, or you have to build it in the store, but you can then take it home for free. This month, and this is January the 6th, Saturday. So this has just come out today. So if you go down to your local GW store, you should see one of these Fellgor Ravagers. Now, what I've done in this case, this is one of the models from the kill team. What I've done is I've removed his bolt gun, or bolt pistol. He had pouches, so there was like a holster on one of the sides. There were grenades and little bits and pieces. I was able to just quickly clip those off. That wasn't too much trouble. The There's a couple of different things you could do depending on what you have in your base box. There was another melee weapon that I could have added to him, but in the end I settled for this shield. So what you could have done is chopped off the arm or the hand and reattached another hand that was about the right size. That had a different weapon. In this case, what I did was I just clipped off the bolt pistol, and as you can see, it was a pretty rough job. And then just glued this spare shield I had. I think it's from some chaos thing. I'm not quite sure where it came from. And what I've done to kind of cut, like it ended up with like a really nasty kind of flat cut here. What I did was I green stuffed in a strap on either side, just to make it look a little bit more natural. That said, I mean, it's probably going to be hidden behind a shield 90% of the time, so it's not something to worry about. Today, what we're going to try to do is we're going to try take Rob the Honest Wargamer's Slapchop approach, at least for part of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to undercoat it black. We're going to grab a dry brush, probably this one, and then we're going to highlight it up grey, and then we're going to highlight up a few bits in white, and then we're going to go over with some contrast paints. So we're probably going to have some sort of fleshy color, maybe gone over a little bit dark brown, and then maybe a bit of a reddish color for the fur bits. We're probably going to break away from that. It is not going to be a pure slap chop, which will be pretty straightforward and pretty simple. We're probably going to go in with some metallics, and we might do a little bit of edge highlighting just to kind of take it up from there. But we're going to start just by doing the basic slap chop method, which is do it black, dry brush it grey, dry brush it white, and then use some contrast paints or any kind of translucenty paint that you want to go over it. So you'll retain the colors. No, so you'll tint essentially the previous dry brushing you had. So it'll get darker in the shadows and it'll be more vibrant because you're going over basically a white with your color on what'll be the highlights. So that's what we're going to try to do. As I said, the conversion was relatively straightforward, just clipping off a few bits and then working out what to do with the optional arm. I did have this one, which I think is quite nice. It is relatively plain. I might be able to get some fun stuff on it later. We'll see how that goes. Obviously, if you've got any shield in your box, you can do the exact same. Even if it's a Stormcast or a City of the Sigmar shield, you can desecrate it and just kind of wreck it a bit and have it something that they picked up. Arguably, the fact that there's some, let me make it out here. There's some barbed wire across this club might annoy some people. In theory, what you could do is you could try scrape it off, which it's doable. And then there's like a little metal clip on there. Given the Age of Sigmar, given Warhammer Fantasy, I think in either case you can probably have someone, like I'm sure the dwarfs have worked out how to make barbed wire or something similar, so I'm not too concerned about it. Anyway, that's where we are. That's what we're planning on doing. This, as I said, is January 6th. The goal here, I've got this assembled, is to try get all of this done in a single day. And I'm going to bring it down to my local GW tomorrow. And then we'll put it on a shelf. Okay, so I've undercoated them, base coated them black. I did a little bit of grey, which according to Rob is cheating. I shouldn't be using the the spray at all. In this case, I got a little speckling on it. A little frustrating. I always need to work on my airbrush technique. Probably too thick or not thick enough, or too low pressure or too high pressure, or it's too humid, or there's always something. Anyway, not going to matter. If you haven't, check out Rob's video. It's very good. Most of it's lies, but the basic technique is good. That's what matters. So in this case, and yeah, there's lots of other people that you can learn how to dry brush properly. There's probably a ton of things I'm doing wrong here. That's fine. I'm gonna take this soft one. Okay. And we're just gonna do it in a downward motion. So the idea here is that it's as if light was coming down. Okay, so we've got in there, we've got all of the major parts. We're now going to take a white, all that grey wasted. Good times, well done, Barry. And this is the proper, well, I mean, it's Blanco white, but there's like a 001 that Rob was recommending in his video. So we're not exactly doing it properly. We're making mistakes everywhere. Sorry, Rob. Not all of us get to live with Turkish priests for years on end to learn the techniques properly, to make do as we go. Okay. So this is going to be a white, and obviously we don't want to go crazy on this. This will be the peaks. All right, I have a handful of contrast paints here. So we've got some Skeleton Horde, we've got some Dark Oath Flesh, Contrast Wildwood, that was good, Guilliman Flesh, Garak's Sewer, I think is really good for doing letters. I really like that one a lot. Now we got some Snakebite and some Gorgonta Fur. I'm hoping Gorgonta Fur will look good for the fur. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to randomly pick one of these. It was kind of a flip up between Guilliman and the Dark Oath Flesh, but we're going to try Dark Oath Flesh. And we're going to just paint it straight on and hope for the best. we are going to break from the Slapchop method here. We're using metallics, and basically the metallics are opaque enough that once you get a good coverage on it, you're not going to see the underlying shadows and highlights coming through. So what you could do is you could use one of the gray contrasts, and or if you were going to do a gold one, yellow contrast, and have it kind of almost like it. But no, in this case, I'm just going to go straight with metallics. No need to mess around. So I do not really have a plan going in with this, and you can see here I did the belly buckle thing in red, and which I thought looked good. And then once I did the other clothes in red as well, it was just too much red, especially because I was also planning on doing red for the shield. So in this case, I'm going back in again, and we're putting a bit of silver, which looks fine. Looking back at it, I think maybe the going with the red would have been good, and then just change um, the clothes to a different color. And maybe trying out some tartan or something like that, something a little bit more interesting, could have been fun. Um, get a bit of a Celtic or Scottish vibe, depending on how you want to do them. But yeah, here we're just going to go with red for clothes, and we're going to go back silver for the belt, and yeah, carry on. Oh, and okay, so at this point, I had a look at the flesh, and I wasn't really happy with it. Um, One of the weird things with the contrast, and I've done this before, uh, is if you don't have, it's only tinting what you have underneath, and I don't think it really works too well for flesh tones, or at least you need to have the underlying um, grays very, very light, I think, to get a proper kind of flesh tone on it. So in this case, what I'm actually using is I'm using the colors that we've got down already. So that was a dark gold flesh, which, I mean, it did look okay. And I'm going to start building it up. So I'm starting off with a Vallejo cork, and then I use a few different flesh tones that are just a little bit lighter, and building up the kind of musculature around the skin. And I'm going to be doing this for a little bit, so I will be cutting and we'll be fast forwarding it. But yeah, it's just to build it up. For whatever reason, um, yeah, you need your flesh to be very, very light, I think, if you're trying to get these colors in. So even if you're going for a dark color, my recommendation would be to try have a nice light, close to white, and that the contrast can work around, because that particular part does need to be a little bit more vibrant, a little bit more, a little bit brighter. So that's what we're doing here. We're going to build it up, and we're going to try correct it. So we are using the Slapchop to get the base down, which I find is a really fast way, good technique for getting things on, but then we're putting in that extra little bit of work afterwards. It does kind of defeat the point a little bit. The best part about Slapchop is you're able to like pile through large ranks of massive armies, and you're able to get through pretty fast. Um, but you might find like there's no harm in going back, and you will find that even like some of the top painters can use the contrast as a starting point and build from there. So it is what it is. the shield looked a little bit plain, so we decided to try a little bit of freehanding. The first thing we tried here is we're just going to go for a chaos star basically. It's a round shield, makes perfect sense. The we are getting some Black Legion contrast. The contrasts are actually very good for freehanding with. I'm not quite sure why. I guess they're kind of inkish. So in this case, what all I'm doing is I'm getting those 8 black lines in, and then we worry about the arrow part of it later. I did find, and actually, yeah, you can see one thing I'm doing here is I am actually turning it upside down. The most natural movement that you have with your hand and your brush is down, taking it from the top, moving it down. So if you have any opportunity to do that, feel free to move your model around so you can actually do down or up to down. You know what I mean? You can see me doing it here. Yeah, so the black just didn't pop enough. So we went back in here and we were using one of the fancy Pro Acryl whites, which is fantastic coverage. So I am doing white over black, which is little crazy, but the Pro Acryl is really good for it. Then what I try do next is I try to get some color on it. So this particular approach of putting down a white line and then putting a contrast over it is really good. Basically, you're putting the white line in and then you're tinting over it with the contrast. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go back in again and we're going to put another white line in, trying to get a little bit smaller, a little bit neater. And then we're going to go do the exact same with the yellow contrast. So we're going to end up hopefully with a yellow in the middle, going to an orange, going out to well, it's going to be over by black, but we're moving into the red of the shield, and we're trying to get a bit of a kind of a glow, ethereal, arcane effect, I guess. Yeah, the key part here is to get those kind of things. A great way to do it, especially with glowing runes and pieces like that, is actually just to keep going in with that white over and over again because it's going to be super bright. And then you're essentially using the contrast as a glaze just to kind of get the color over. And you don't necessarily have to have your yellow directly onto just the white. You can be a little bit messy around it and that actually works quite well because it does keep kind of tinting around it. So you kind of get this faded glow between it. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm going for. I'm by no means someone good at freehand. I did briefly look at the Beast of Chaos symbol and think about whether I was brave enough to do that. I was not. And maybe a simple skull could have been a good thing to do. Um, yeah, and here's me just kind of neatening up the edges to get those arrows in. And that's it. So you might have seen earlier, I did put a Agrax Earthshade wash over most of the model, just kind of get a little bit of shadowing into it, I guess. There's certainly no harm tying it all together with a wash. And then we did a little bit of highlighting. So I do go, if I haven't done already, I will be doing it soon. I do go into take one of the browns, one of the lighter browns. I also can't remember which it was. It was probably Scrag Brown. Um, and highlight up the fur just a little bit. It doesn't necessarily need it, but you know, I was going to make it pop a little bit. And I think here with this red, I think I'm, yeah, kind of looking at, oh, the contrast burgundy or one of the reds work quite well, especially if you dilute it down. And then this model does have a couple of scars on it. After the skin has been painted, taking one of those red contrasts, tin down, and just swiping it over the scar works really well to get a really nice kind of wound or badly healed scar effect. So that was something I did use in this. Anyway, we're coming to the end of this. Um, I'm not a model painting person. That's not why I have the channel. Most of my actual useful content is just talking about stats and looking at hopefully the best way to get a good two-player game going. But I do enjoy painting these models, and I love the fact that you can get a monthly figure from GW and you can have a bit of fun with it. So if you haven't yet, this should be the one in store. I'm planning to get this uploaded on the Sunday. Will come out on the Saturday. So if you wander in tomorrow, there's a good chance you'll be able to pick up this model. And yeah, maybe give it your own shot. If you do, please let me know. Please link me your Instagram picture. I'd love to see it. I absolutely adore when the community has a model to work on. So yeah, I really like these monthly figures that Warhammer does, and that's why I keep uploading these videos anytime I get a chance. All right, thank you very much for enduring all the way through and getting to the end of this. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to include a couple of shots of the final model at the very end. And I'm going to wish you a great day.